afternoon. We are excited to continue our series on financial literacy and economics, and I hope everybody can hear me well. My name is Kyle Osborne, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself here in a minute, but it's been pretty exciting to have this series. I think we've had 5 or 6 of them so far, and we're going to continue them all the way through the end of the school year. So if you have fellow teachers and you know that they're teaching different grades and they would benefit from this, please let them know, get the word out. We're doing webinars from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade in relation to financial literacy and economics. So I think a few other people are still getting on here. Just know that all of these are going to be recorded and all the resources will be shared later on, so don't worry about writing everything down, even though if you have some good ideas as you're in this webinar, please write them down, but know that all of this will be sent out later. So we're going to kick it off and get started. It is 3:30, and so welcome. We're excited that you're here. We're going to move on with our presentation. So a couple of housekeeping things. If you haven't noticed, if you have some technical difficulties, there's some help in the top right. It says Get Help. You can click on that, and it might be able to troubleshoot and help and get you can hear or speak up. But a couple things I want to point out is that during this presentation, you're going to be muted. And so if you're trying to say something, that's why. So if you have questions in the upper left, so just take your attention to the upper left, there's an attendee list and then there's a chat. So go ahead and click on the chat and then type in any messages or any comments that you have, and we'll try to answer those at the end. So we're not trying to ignore you, but just trying to make sure that we get through all the content that we're hoping to get through, and then at the end we'll be taking questions. And like I said before, today's presentation is going to be recorded. So if you have questions or want to follow up with any of the curriculum that we're discussing today, please do so. Everything that's going to be in this presentation I've hyperlinked, and if you have trouble with a hyperlink, you can go in and it's not working, so feel free to send me an email and I can send you the direct link or the resource or whatever. So yeah, want to be of as helpful as I can. Continuing on here, this is myself, Kyle Osborne, Director of Outreach for TS Institute. A little bit about me is I have a real passion for financial literacy. I grew up in a home where my mom and dad really, they made financial decisions, but they weren't on the same page in many ways. And so a part of my experience and upbringing was really trying to find just a good, healthy way of doing it just for myself. And then as I've been working with TS Institute over the last 6.5 years, and as I've met hundreds of teachers, hundreds of students, thousands of students actually, and just trying to find some good resources that are not necessarily have to be free or cheap, but like good resources that are high quality, that can easily be integrated into the classroom. And so that's kind of where my passion comes from. And so know that today there's no sales pitch, none of that, but really committed to helping you as an educator be the best that you can be, but then also not feeling like you're alone in the process. So that's kind of a little bit about me. So today is 6th grade. So if you're in a different a teacher in a different grade, you can still feel free to stay, but our focus is going to be on 6th grade and 6th grade standards in relation to financial literacy. So just a quick snapshot. If you haven't been to the Department of Ed's website and just looking at the different standards, there are 6 of them. Just kidding, there are 5 of them. And so as we look at the different standards today, what I'm hoping to do is give you a little bit, maybe a best practice, give you a little bit of just some out of the box ideas and then give you a little bit of some of the resources that are out there that can be helpful for you. Hopefully they're as turnkey as possible and to get you where you need to go. So a couple best practices comments that I'd like to share is the first one is if you're teaching a new unit, even if it's a little bit out of scope and sequence for you, I would encourage you to teach your best lesson first. I know it's a little bit out of practice. I know a lot of educators, they kind of wait maybe for the end or maybe the middle to kind of get students excited. But if you think on the first day of class, whether it's whether you teach hexes or however many days you get these students, I would highly encourage you to teach your best lesson first. What that does, first of all, is it gets a student excited about whatever the content that you're teaching. And you might disagree with me on this, maybe we'll agree, but I found that as I have helped teachers across the state of Iowa, one of the first comments they get is, well, how do we get them engaged and how do we get them excited about this stuff? And my first comment is, well, what does your first day look like? And they talk to me about, well, we go through syllabus stuff, we kind of go through like our unit that we're going to go through, and then we kind of ease into it. And I would argue, man, get the students excited right away, get them motivated, get them excited, and then you can kind of bring them back to that lesson if that unit comes up a little bit later on. And so I think many of you are teaching 8 weeks, or you got small kind of mini series. And so I would just encourage you, teach your best lesson first and then dive into the rest of your content. Make it memorable. I know many ways that I like to have the students get up and act, and I'll show you some resources for that. But make it memorable, help them to see that not only is financial literacy fun, but they can actually make memories in the classroom to get them continuing on in that direction. Most of my memories growing up as a kid have to do with just fun, interactive things, or growing up with my mom and my dad and learning something, and there's kind of an emotional connection there. And so as the memorable moments for me are good learning moments for me also. So continuing on, I want to tackle the first standard. So the first standard is under develop financial and career goals. So with this, there's different resources that you can use. So I just threw up 6 of them. Some of these are best practice. Some of these are just good ideas, hopefully. And then some of them are curriculum. So explain how personal financial decisions are influenced by an individual's interpretation of needs and wants. And so a lot of 6th grade students are like, your idea of what I have for needs and wants and my idea of what my needs and wants are different. And so maybe that's true. And so with that, I want to throw out a couple ideas for you. So the first one is Money Island. We used to pay for this as a tool, the Institute, TS Institute. Since then, we've discontinued that, but I still think it's a really phenomenal resource. And so there's different institutions across the nation. There might be one in your backyard that pays for it. Money Island is about a little boy, not a little boy, but a middle school boy or girl. And they live on an island. They got stranded there because of bad, poor financial choices. And so it's kind of like similar to Pinocchio in the fact that the little boy or the little girl turns into a stone, and he's called Stone Broke. And the students that are doing this online gamification, if you will, / with a lot of educational opportunity, they go through and they make good, sound financial choices. And then as they do that, they realize that they're moving from a stone back into a real boy or girl again. And so it's a really good platform. If you haven't checked it out or haven't heard of it, you can find a financial institution across the state of Iowa. I've done a little research. You can find quite a few of them, and it's a great tool. I think there's 6 or 7 different modules. Really, really good. So I put it on the first standard, but a lot of the lessons correlate with the rest of the standards that we'll talk about today. So as you look at just to the right of the Money Island, the Take Charge Today, I really like, there's a lesson in there that's hyperlinked. I really like this lesson because it dives into values. I think when we talk about needs and wants, sometimes it's like needs are just water, shelter, and it's kind of just plain Jane, if you will, and then wants are anything above and beyond that, and it's not real, I don't know, engaging, if you will. And so what this lesson does is it hits needs and wants from a value system. So if somebody has a high value for security, you can talk about the needs and wants for that. And so it really kind of connects their head and heart, if you will, the students, to what they value. It also has a great resource or an activity where the students actually put a poster out for a help friend wanted ad. And so the students can actually design a friend wanted. And so they can put the things that are necessary or needs for a friendship and the things that they really want. So it might be somebody who's friendly, or maybe they want somebody that plays sports, but they don't need to play sports. And so they're learning this distinction between needs and wants by creating a friend ad. To the right of that, there's a palm tree. This is one of the activities I really like to do. Is it's if the students got stranded on a desert island, what 3 things or 5 things or 8 things or however many you want to tell them, what things would they have to be on this island to survive? What would you bring to this island if you know you're going to get stranded? You know, you can bring up different scenarios, but it gets them thinking about needs and wants in a different way, stranded. On the just below the palm tree, the choices curriculum. If you go to choices.org, it's a curriculum that you can have a professional come in, and it's a 2-day, 45-minute or so, and it really goes into the choices and the options that students have. Phenomenal resource. It's great at just integrating financial literacy, decision making, prioritization, those types of things. And so if you're even, you can even do the curriculum, but it's best utilized when you have a business professional come in. It's just 2 days, 45 minutes. So highly recommend that. Those are kits that are for purchase. You can even ask the business that comes in to pay for that. That'd be great. Next to the choices in the bottom center, the Next Gen Personal Finance. If you're familiar with Next Gen Personal Finance, great resource. Lots and lots of different lessons. And the students are actually, in this activity, are forced to prioritize what are they going to spend their money on. And so as students are given a certain dollar amount, they have to figure out, do I need this? Do I want this? You can also kind of shape that lesson and maybe ask them to go home and say, hey, if you have $40 to go buy groceries for your family, what are the things that you need for, let's say, spaghetti, or what are the things that you want with spaghetti? And so that's just it's maybe a spin off of that lesson. I've done that with my kids. My kids are a little bit younger, but I give them a dollar amount and they have to figure out, what do I need with this meal and what do I want with this meal? And it helps them differentiate. So if we go to this illustration, this is a political, if you're familiar, Sesame Street, I can't remember what these guys are called, but it's basically a debate picture to kind of prompt you to consider maybe turning your classroom into an opportunity for your students to discuss whether they agree or disagree that there's a need or a want. And so what I've done is I've you can just write down, I don't know, 5 or 6 different things that students might debate on if it's a need or a want. So like a cell phone, is it a need or a want? A paycheck, is it a need or a want? Having pop or a drink or water, is it need or a want? And I don't usually say need or want. I usually say, do you have to have a car? And go on the left side of the room if you think you have to have a car. Go on the right side of the room if you could live without it. And so then I let them kind of talk amongst their group, and then they get a 30-second kind of pitch of trying to convince the other people on the other side of the room that you have to have this thing or you don't have to have this thing. And so hopefully that's a good discussion starter. That's, in my opinion, one of the best ways to get this conversation going, is just have a little bit of a debate. Get them excited about it. Get them passionate about, do I have to have this? Could I live without it? And so just a great way to get them up, get them moving, and just some ideas for you there. So that is standard number 1. The second standard that we're going to look at is creating savings and spending plan, demonstrate how to allocate income for spending, saving, and giving. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about one of the resources for Take Charge. So I might try to add that with this slide. But anyways, so if you haven't checked out My Classroom Economy, it is basically to turn your classroom into a mini society where every student gets a job. They might get a paycheck. They get a particular role to play in the classroom, whether that's safety officer or somebody who's the mayor or whatever. Really, it takes everybody and kind of gives them an identity, a role in the classroom. And then as they're given a paycheck, they can kind of decide, what do I want to spend my money on? Do I want to save it? Do I want to buy my neighbor's desk? And then they can pay me rent. It's a really great tool, not only just creating an economic kind of financial literacy environment for your classroom, but it's a great way to get them to think in terms of how they relate to other students. I know in 6th grade, there's a lot going on hormone-wise. I've dealt with lots and lots of middle schoolers. And so just kind of help them give them kind of a purpose in the classroom is a great classroom management tool, but just also a great way to make your classroom, expectant, like what's going to happen in our classroom today. To the right of My Classroom Economy is an online website. Maybe some of you have seen it before. It's called Spent. If you go to playspent.org, you can actually play a simulation where students are given choices. What kind of career do I want? What choices should I make? Should I spend money on this? Should I give money to this? What should I do with my money? There's a follow-up lesson underneath that's connected. Just a phenomenal way to get them to start thinking about, man, I don't know if I can make ends meet, and just really get them thinking about life in a very applicable way. To the left of Spent, you'll see Spartan Dollars and Cents. Michigan State University put out like a paper pencil simulation where students are given a career. They're given some things to spend money on. They can choose to give. They can choose to save. A lot of their life is chose to spend on like housing and food and those types of things. This is hyperlinked. It'll go to Michigan State's website. It's a really cool simulation. And then there's also what's called an action card where if you've seen the movie with, I'm totally blanking on his name, but he says, life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. I'm totally blanking on the movie, but there's an action card with this curriculum, Spartan Dollars and Cents, where students are, your muffler might fall off, or if you don't have health or life insurance, Forrest Gump, thanks, Vicki. If you don't have life insurance and something happened, then you got to pay this amount of money. So it's kind of like a real life simulation. It's pretty neat. Underneath that is again, Next Gen Personal Finance has a really good tool. They have an online banking simulation. So if you want to get your students kind of exposed to transferring money, bill pay, those types of things, it's a real soft introduction. There's no salesy gimmicks. It's just the students can kind of go on and create a profile. They can transfer money. It kind of gives them some exposure to that. And then to the bottom right, Take Charge Today, there's some great checking activities. So there's a transaction register. I know a lot of people don't have them per se, but a lot of the students, what they need to know is that when they spend money, they have to keep track of it. And so in that particular lesson, the students actually, and you can give them, what I've done in the past is just print out a transaction register from this lesson and then say, okay, everybody, we're gonna create a day where everybody's gonna go shopping at the mall or whatever, wherever you're gonna go shopping. Maybe you're gonna go to Disneyland, and what is the first thing we gotta do? Well, we gotta spend money on entrance. Okay, now what are we gonna do? We're gonna go buy a funnel cake. All right, do we wanna save some of that? Or you can even build in like a savings component prior to your trip to the zoo or to Disneyland or whatever. And so this could be like a week-long process of just helping them prepare for some event that they're going to go to. But this particular lesson really dives into just the money management piece of where's money going. Great application there. So great resource for that second standard. So the third standard, we're going to move a little bit quicker. We got just stay on time here, but evaluate savings and long-term investments. Sometimes this one's a really hard one, especially for sixth grade students who are like, man, there's no way. I can't even think about being a freshman in college or a senior in high school or whatever. But helping them identify, like as the standard says, identify the advantages and disadvantages of various savings tools. That's just kind of a wordy way of saying, how do we look ahead and what are some ways that I can prepare for that financially, right? How do I save for that? And so on the far left, there's an ant. There's a picture of an ant. Hopefully that tie you back to, it's a lesson from Next Gen Personal Finance. And it takes a pretty interesting angle on just preparing for the future. So they talk about an ant, a beetle, and a cricket, and how each of those bugs prepare for winter. And the ant is actually stocking away tons and tons and tons of food. And an ant's life cycle is long. I think they might even say like 10 or 15 years because they're prepared. There's less stress. They're ready to go. They're excited about kind of their winter because they're ready to go. Whereas the beetle, he's ready, but when winter is over, he's super hungry and has to get nutrition or else he's going to die. And his lifespan might be 5 years or so. And then on the flip side, the cricket, his lifespan's like 1.5 to 2 years because he just doesn't plan, and winter comes and he dies. And so it's a pretty interesting take on like saving and preparing for the future from a bug's perspective view. It's kind of fun. The center resource, the compound interest calculator, I like to use that for shock value, like helping students connect with, okay, so if you saved, let's say you saved $5 a month for the next, I don't know, trying to help them see that if they started saving now and then they saved until they retired, let's say at 67 or 68 or whatever, and how much money they're going to have compounding on itself. And so that's just a great visual tool. The far right tool is Stacks. It's from Next Gen Personal Finance also. And the students can actually go on and do a simulation of they have so much money, they can invest it in stocks, they can invest it, or they can actually save it in a bank account. They can buy individual stocks, they can buy some commodities, they can buy gold, they can buy CDs, those types of things. So it exposes them to a lot of the different products that are out there, but it gives them kind of options, so they can kind of play around with that. On the bottom left, you have the stock market game. That's been a great after school club that we've kind of integrated, helped to integrate in different schools, help students kind of get a feel of like, man, what is a stock and what is a bond? And it gets their feet wet. And underneath that, there's a Prezi that I created. And it's just to kind of give you a crash course in like, what is the stock market? How do I even introduce this? There's different stock market games that are out there, and some of them are really cool. This is just the one that we've used. It has a ton of different lessons and just content for educators to use. And the Prezi, what I did is I just kind of took all of the different lessons, just made it into a easy to use presentation tool. So feel free to use that. On the far right, this is a lesson called Where's My Dough from Take Charge Today. I really like this one in particular because it's got a kinesthetic flavor to it. And no pun intended there, not trying to encourage students to eat the Play-Doh, but anyways, you give the students some Play-Doh, and what they do is they kind of look at their dough. And what I've done in the past is given students like maybe 4 or 5 different pieces of Play-Doh, and then some students only 1 or 2, and so some students have more dough, well, they make more money, and some students have less dough. And then what I have them do is kind of squish out, usually put a piece of paper and squish it out, and then, and then you can kind of divide up the money pie, if you will, or dough, money dough, and they are trying to figure out like, how much of the pie do I want to go for food, and how much of the pie do I want to go for entertainment? And you can even have them how much, where does your money go? And so they have the students divided up, and they actually see in pie graph form how much of their money is going to just spending on themselves. And they're like, whoa, do you want that? And have them evaluate that. So those are just some tools and resources to use for that. So moving right along, I believe we have a couple more standards here, just two more. Yep. And so analyze credit and debt levels. This is always a tough one. I found just a really cool video. So on the top left, it's a video that is on YouTube. And a debit card and a credit card and a prepaid card are having a conversation, prepaid debit card, are having a conversation of, man, I think you're horrible because of this, and I think you're horrible because of this. And then they kind of banter back and forth and try to pitch why they're better. And then at the end, I think there's like a gift card that pops out of the wallet. And then at the end, the gal's like, well, so the setting is like a supermarket or grocery store. And then at the end, the gal who's trying to figure out what should I use to pay, she ends up using cash. And so it was like bummed, but you kind of get the pros and cons of all the different options. So it's a pretty cool video. I think that it would be really engaging for the students. On the top right, the cat insanity. This is it's an interesting way of talking about debt. So there's a lesson underneath that from Next Gen Personal Finance. But cat insanity is it's an online game where students are they select the cat, and the cat has certain features. You have to feed the cat, take care of the cat, and when you do, it goes away. But the more cats that you take care of, the faster they come back. And so it starts out 1 and 2, and then it just gets crazy. Like it gets crazy, and it gets unmanageable. And so what this lesson really does is it helps students connect the dots between, as life gets crazy and debt kind of piles up. Let's particularly credit cards. It gets really stressful, and so it helps students kind of really get that emotional connection of, oh my goodness, I can't handle all these cats, can't feed them all. In the same way, if they don't manage their money well, that's going to get out of hand. So it's a pretty cool illustration. The Take Charge today is just is a really cool lesson. It's kind of more one of your canned lessons, but it talks about how the pros and cons of a credit card, and well, how is it different than a debit card. A couple things I want to say about just a debit card or credit card, specifically with a debit card. A lot of students have questions like, well, how come they ask me if it's debit or credit? And so just for your knowledge, if it runs as debit, it comes immediately out of the checking account, and the PIN is required for that. And so a quick story is I like to say that hypothetical situation: boyfriend, girlfriend go to the bank ATM. The boyfriend gives the girlfriend their PIN number, gives them their debit card. They pull cash out. They go to the football game. They get in a fight. They break up. Now, what does the girlfriend know about the boyfriend? Well, he knows, or she knows, the PIN number. Well, is that good or bad? No. And so this just kind of one way to connect the dots there. We'll get to the next standard about identity theft, those types of things. But as getting back to the debit card specifically, as it's run as debit, PIN number, and then if it's run as credit, it's activating the Visa or the MasterCard feature. A lot of times it takes 2 or 3 days, to process, and it comes in on the backside of the bank as a batch. It's called a batch. But anyways, so just kind of a heads up, like helping the students connect the dots of like, when your parents pay for something and use a debit card, have you ever noticed the cashier ask for debit or credit? What do you think that means? And so as they're kind of figuring all that out, on the bottom right in the Google Docs, I have a downloadable Google Doc that you can use. What I've done in the past is have students, when they're trying to figure all this out, like credit card, what's the difference? Credit card, gift card, savings account, debit, all those different ones. I have them call banks or credit union, whatever. Just call them up and say, hey, I want to learn more about how your debit card works. And then I have what's called in the Google Doc a bank showdown. So I usually try to assign the students a bank or credit union, and they kind of get as much research. It might take a couple of days to get as much research as possible, and then the students actually present. Here's what I learned about this institution. Here's what I like about debit cards, and they kind of share with the rest of the class. So, real quickly, our last standard. You can read the standard, but on the top left column, if you can, is a fun online game. It's from financialentertainment.org. It's actually pretty engaging, so it's just maybe a great way to lead in to this particular unit, or to this standard. On the top right, the identity theft picture. What I've done, that's just a reminder for me, but identity theft, what I have done in the past in different classrooms, I had the students either use their computer or go do some research at home, or I want them to go out and say, like, what types of identity theft is happening? What are people scared of? I haven't gone out and actually research online and kind of figure out, like, what does identity theft look like? And oh my goodness, there was a lady that she tracked her identity thief down and caught her. And like, once the students kind of get engaged, they're like, oh my goodness, there's real people out there. This is happening. And as they're finding real stories, they start to connect. Oh my goodness, I think this is really important. Maybe I should protect. Maybe I shouldn't tell my best friend what my garage code is, or what my parents' PIN number is to their debit card. So that's just a reminder for you. Help them connect the dots between what's going on in the real world and what's going on in the classroom. On the bottom left, next in personal finance, they have a great lesson that's connected to helping the different types of identity theft that are out there. So whether that's just credit card, or there's truly identity, like people are stealing a person's whole persona. And so what that lesson does is kind of walks them through that. The bottom picture is a game. I don't know if you've played it before, but it's called Bands. The old school version of it would be like Blind Man's Bluff. So this is just maybe a different strategy, or maybe an activity that you could do, active learning technique, that you have the students draw a picture of what it could be, an animal, or it could be somebody famous. They print off somebody famous, they bring it in, and then you mix all the pictures up, and then you have them put that picture on their forehead. And it's a little bit like charades in the sense, but the students actually trying to, if you've ever played Blind Man's Bluff, you're holding a picture to your forehead and you're asking the other person questions to figure out like who your identity is, but you don't really know. And so it's just a great interactive activity where the students are trying to figure out identity by questions and answers and things like that. And it's kind of a soft lead into identity theft. Well, other people are doing that, and just helping them connect the dots between that. So that's just a great kind of soft introduction to identity theft. So I wanted to kind of throw these out. Here's some of the curriculum that we've used today. And then my website, TS Institute. I've also used Powtoons so any of these lessons, if you want like a digital medium, if you will, you can have the students create a Powtoons account, and then they can actually, what they're learning, they create like a cartoon video to teach the rest of the class of what they've been learning. The Play Factile is a Jeopardy game. I've used that. We've used that in our organization different ways. So it's just a fun tool fun play tool. So anyways, on the bottom left, I just threw out a couple of resources for you as an educator. Bridges Out of Poverty is a tool that I've been using to just grow in my knowledge of what it like low income, just people that maybe are stuck in generational poverty, slash just financial kind of stuckness, if you will. So just trying to learn new and innovative ways to engage populations where they just have no reference for financial health. The other one is Winning the Money Game. Adam Carroll's a friend of mine, friend of our organization, and just a great book. Sometimes educators might use this Winning the Money Game as a tool to integrate into English or whatever. So there's just a couple resources for you. So I want to kind of open it up for questions, and then just a quick reminder that there'll be a survey after the webinar it'll redirect you, and we'll be giving away some gift cards. So if you want to let us know like what you thought of this, what you wish there was, or if you want some follow up, let me know. But at this time, I'm going to direct your attention to the attendee chat. So if there's any questions that you have for me, as always, you can follow up later on. But if anybody has any questions, would love to answer those. Hey, Jennifer, yes. You will get a copy of this presentation, the PowerPoint, of the recording of the presentation, and everything on this PowerPoint is going to be hyperlinked. So you don't have to worry about like, where was that website? It's going to be hyperlinked, and it'll be hopefully easy to use. A good question, Jennifer. Hyperlinked in an email. So in the PowerPoint, so the PowerPoint will be sent via email, and when that PowerPoint is sent to you, each of the pictures they'll be hyperlinked. So as you go through the presentation on your own, like in your own time, you can just click on the different pictures and it'll open up in a web browser, if that makes sense. So you'll actually get the PowerPoint presentation. And Bob just made a comment. So at the end, if and when you do the survey, we really appreciate it. But if you don't do the survey, your name's not going to go in the drawing. But if you do, you'll get a $20 gift card. So thanks for your comments, Kathy. Stacy, on how much time is typically spent on the 5 financial literacy standards? That really kind of depends on the context. Most educators that I've met, especially like in the middle school level, they're able to do 1, maybe 2, and if at best 3 different class periods for these different content areas. You can interweave them. So what I've found is some of the like savings, some of the savings lessons, and then some of the money management. Like you kind of interweave those together. But traditionally, at least at the middle school level, you don't have much time. It's from what I understand, most educators they have like 8 weeks at the maximum. And so sometimes they work with like the math teacher, or the English teacher to integrate maybe like a financial literacy book or, things like that. So that's been common practice that I've found. Jennifer, how do you get previous PowerPoints? Yeah, just send, I'll go to the next slide here at the very end. So there's some contact information for Vicki, myself, and then Bob. And so if you send any of us an email, we would gladly get you any of the presentations, and would love to do that. That's what we do. So this is our full-time gig. Cool. Well, without any further questions, I'm gonna close this out here. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate you. And if there's anything that we can help, whether it's just maybe scope and sequence or just different ideas for your classroom, feel free to reach out. Even if you're like, man, I just am stuck in this particular topic, would love to just help with that. So our goal is that you would be able to do what you do best is teach. And then if we can supplement that in any way, we'd love to do that. So, all right, well, have a great day, everybody, and take care.